from Mobile, Alabama. Not fresh, a little stale, a lot tired. Here's Mike Giardi, Boston Sports Journal, back on a happy Friday with Pat's Interference. I am very fresh, I will tell you. I have not gone anywhere. I have not boarded a plane or 5 or 7 or however many it took you to get down there and then come back watching Mike Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, and Elliot Wolf. Did I put them in that order for a reason? I don't know. We'll get into it. But anyway, we have Mike's takes, his scouting reports, his complaints, everything from this week down in Mobile, which is obviously where most of the football world was watching this week. And then we're going to get into some coaching staff and moves and a little bit of intel for the folks who've been following along. Because while you were gone, I was working here. I was keeping tabs, making some calls, sending some texts, and writing up a lot of different moves that have happened. Of all that, I guess we'll just start here with the question I really never ask in this podcast because I think it's the most boring way to start, but we're going to do it anyway because you're a friend. How are you?
We got in at 2:30 last night. A lot of planes, trains, automobiles, cancellations, reschedulings, and I was hoping to wake up at like 11 this morning. That was like my please, but I woke up at 8:30 because I'm old and that's what old people do. Had to get up, have my Geritol, my Wheaties, but here we are. I was committed to you. Like Andrew's my guy, so I'm going to be here for Andrew. And when I'm tired, I think we did one during the season at one point where I'm going to be like hard time focusing. So let's just get to it and see what happens.
Well, speaking of focusing, what is Geritol?
Yeah, that's like an old man vitamin. Like you probably still eat Flintstones, right?
They're gummies. They're not for children, but they're they're not the hard pill. Yes.
Yeah. No, actually, I'm not a Geritol yet, but I do have the Centrum over 50. Yeah, because I'm over 50, which is so sad. It's pretty much over.
You're doing pretty well. This is where we're going to end that flowery conversation here.
Okay,
but
let's go. Let's talk football.
You're doing just fine. Yes, we are here for football. Look, I want to know a lot about the Senior Bowl. I've done a little bit of reading because I think at this time of year and everyone dives back into the draft, there are very few people, especially those of us who cover an NFL team, who have spent real time assessing film with these college prospects. Granted, I'm not going to totally withhold from what you write and draft experts, Daniel Jeremiah or Mel Kiper or Dane Brugler, certainly entirely, because I need a framework of guys that I look at and positions and names. But I don't like to dive in just yet because I don't want their evaluations to kind of pollute or shape or influence what I eventually see when I start to pick up the tape, which is right now. When you think about your biggest takeaway from the Senior Bowl, though, zooming as far out as possible, and this could be about Mike Vrabel or Ryan Cowden and Elliot Wolf. And did I put them in that order? Yes, I might have put them in that order for a reason. Mm-hmm. Or the prospects, whatever it was. Give us your biggest takeaway before we get into the nitty gritty of the players that are on the field.
So I really, when we went down there, my boss was focused on one thing and I was focused more on field stuff. And so I guess what I came away from is, like everybody said, it's an awesome D-line class. Like there's a bunch of dudes. So, and I'm talking dudes from the first round to someone you might get in the 7th round who could help you this year. I think that's how deep that class is. But then from the skill position standpoint, and I'm talking quarterback, which is obviously impacts the Patriots where they stand in the draft, and then wide receivers, it's just not. I mean, there are some good players at wide receiver, but like last year, Ladd McConkey, Roman Wilson, there were a bunch of dudes that just went to Mobile and you were like, I knew who this guy was before and I had high expectations for him. And then when I saw him in person, I'm like, no, that dude's even better than I thought he was. This wasn't that. This was like, okay, I kind of like him. He's got some things he can do, but no one was like, oh my goodness, this dude just jumped off the page. So that to me was something that it's like the talent level is, I think it's a deep group. And you hear that a lot now. It feels like everybody says, between 15 and 55 or 20 and 65, it's like the same kind of player. It's just how teams will stack them based on their needs and how they play. But I definitely see that there's some good players, but I don't know how many oh, wow, these guys are going to be dominant forces in the league for 10, 12 years.
Right. And that's a function of the year-to-year difference in just talent. Like some years you've got a quarterback class that's loaded and the networks are happy and you see all the commercials and it provides this hype into the first round. And right now everyone's going, does anyone really want to trade up with the Titans to number 1 overall, or are they just going to have to sit tight? And I think it also speaks to the fact that the Senior Bowl, as you're speaking now, kind of speaks to me as like scouting speed dating. You get 2-3 days with these guys, very limited reps, but sometimes when you know it, you see it. and you feel it. And you're like, okay, Ladd McConkey, put him down. And that's how I felt, at least watching him. Granted, again, wasn't in Mobile. Had never actually been to the Senior Bowl. Was there anything else outside of that? Because you also wrote about the coaching staff this week, and that's really where I want to start, because we'll kind of go backwards here. Impressions of the Patriots hires, which I'll just go down now in case people forgot, because look, there has been a lot of shuffling, coming and going for different assistants. And so right now, basically the easiest way to understand this is everyone who was on the staff last year, wave goodbye. Everybody except for Jeremy Springer, your special teams coordinator. Quinn, his special teams assistant, who's a longtime coaching veteran, multiple decades in the business. And as of this morning, courtesy of our fellow short Mike Reese, Ben McAdoo, the mustachioed cockroach who has survived an event that took out all other offensive coaches under Josh McDaniels, he's sticking around. And I don't know what his role is. That hasn't been reported yet. Last year, we know he helped with Drake May and Joe Milton, some of the scout team defense. But he will be a part of an offensive staff that right now we have Ashton Grant, Brown's assistant, who's going to coach quarterbacks. Tony Dews coming over from the Jets, before that in Tennessee, like a lot of these coaches coaching running backs. TBD and the receivers coach, we'll get to that in a minute. Thomas Brown, tight ends coach and pass game coordinator, as I reported this week. Doug Marrone, presumably going to help with the offensive line. Jason Hotailing spoke in this podcast a couple weeks ago, said watch out for him. He's coming aboard. And then they got a bunch of lower levels assistants. Defensively, Terrell Williams, we know, defensive coordinator for the Lions. And basically, let's just put a bunch of young assistants here who have crossed path with Mike Vrabel at some point in time. So either the scuttlebutt around that staff, things you picked up, learned, or just your assessment. Take this wherever you want with the coaching staff.
So the big thing when I got down there was, so the day we flew down was the day that the Marrone news came out. And like the initial response was like, hey, he's a good coach. He's been around for a long time, got the head coaching experience. Most of the people that I talked to very quickly, because we were literally just getting on a plane, were like, yeah, he's a good offensive line coach. And then I just started to do some digging, and I just had some questions about sort of his approach. He's old school, which again, I wrote it in Boston Sports Journal, like, it's fine. Like I want my offensive linemen to be the toughest, baddest dudes on the planet. Like I want them to be able to handle anything, but he can be really critical and it can be biting. And I think we have clearly seen a shift, the last 5 years, the last 10, wherever you want to put it, where that doesn't always play anymore. And I wonder how that will work for an offensive line that's going to be completely retooled. It's possible that you could be looking at 4 new starters next year, at least 3 guys that aren't here in the building. Like there could be some massive changes there. And I wonder too about like, how does that play with some of the young guys? Like, the Caden Wallace's, Layden Robinson types who, again, are part of this newer generation, or someone that they might draft. Will those guys be able to handle sort of that approach? I also found it interesting. I went back and I was, just like looking through some old Marrone interviews, and I covered him when he was the head coach in Jacksonville. And I found a quote from him about how when he takes a new job, he doesn't want to watch the film of the guys that he's inheriting. He wants to see them on the field, see how they move, see how they respond to coaching before he starts to make an impression. And my thought on that is, if you just got hired in January and you're not going to be doing field work until May, and that's not even real field work, let's be honest, you're not doing real field work until August or late July, whenever they finally put on the pads, like that's a lot of wasted time. Like, and maybe he just was whatever. Maybe he wasn't being not truthful, but you know what I mean? Like maybe he was just sort of whatever. This is what I'm going to say, but that's not how he views it. But I don't love that at all. Like you should know these guys inside and out before you hit free agency, before you get them on the field in May. Like that just I don't love that. And I'll just say on top of that, just as a group, I think this coaching staff on the offensive side doesn't make much sense to me. And I'm not saying there aren't good coaches and plenty of experience. Like I like having all these guys with head coaching experience, but like we just lived this 2 years ago. Bill Belichick had Bill O'Brien sort of foisted upon him, right? I mean, I think we can all agree that ownership said, you're getting a real offensive coordinator. We like this guy. You have experience. Let's do this.
Well, it was more, hey, you can pick from this menu. But it's not a full menu. It's a specifically tailored happy hour menu of things that make me happy, maybe not necessarily you.
And then what did they do for Bill? They gave him a menu that had, you're allowed 1 item. He got Will Lawling on the staff, and everybody else was inherited.
O'Brien did. Yeah.
Yeah. And that offense didn't work for a lot of reasons. That whole season didn't work, right? We've gone into that very well. But like when you're hiring an offensive coordinator, he should have some of his guys. And right now, I mean, maybe the assistant quarterbacks coach who comes from John Carroll, right? Like maybe he's the guy and he's 26, 28, whatever he is. Like that's not to me what I'm looking for. And maybe this is too far, but all I could think of is in putting together this staff, it feels a little bit like the Carolina super staff in 2023 with Frank Reich, where David Tepper's like, no, we're bringing in all these different voices and all these guys that have coached elsewhere, and the paths hadn't really crossed. And it was like, oh, no, go run an offense together. Well, I don't know this guy, and I don't know that guy. I don't know what he expects from me. And like that season predictably went terrible, and guys got fired before the end of year one. This team, that shouldn't happen to this team, but I just don't like the construction of it. And I'd like someone to explain it to me because I haven't got a good answer yet.
So I understand and appreciate the concerns about the coaching staff, and I think some of them are very legitimate for the reasons you laid out. Okay. You want to throw a bunch of pieces together. They might not fit. They're not united by a philosophy or experience or any kind of overlapping beliefs about football. That's generally an issue. The comparison to 2023, however, something that, I learned in reporting deep on that season of just like, again, you're only united by the fact you have Bill Belichick's contact in your cell phone. Like that, right. That's it. You have his number. That's the reason that you're here. There are no Ross Douglases on this staff. There are no Vinny Cinceris on this staff. Guys who played defense in college, were younger than 30 and running position groups and rooms pretty much by themselves. Okay. Running backs and receivers respectively, or receivers and running backs respectively. Instead, aside from Ashton Grant, who we know, okay, he's a quarterback's coach, Josh is running that room. Josh is laying out every single step of the development, practice, meetings. That's going to be his job. Tony Dews has been around. Thomas Brown has been around. Doug Marrone has been around. This feels much more to me like set it and forget it. This is what I want you to do. Just get the job done. Now, if they are united in understanding that like Josh is the boss, he'll collaborate some on game plan, but that really is going to start with Vrabel, right? He's going to say, I want these 3 things done. Now you make it happen. I think this can work. It doesn't mean there won't be any strife. It doesn't mean strife isn't also just a normal part of day-to-day coaching life. Bunch of sometimes alpha males in that group. But it is interesting to me that a lot of these, or if not most or all of them, were Vrabel hires more than Josh hires. And I know there were some assistants, having spoken to people and people close to them, that would have come back to New England and just never got a phone call. So why was that? I don't know. I don't buy the theory that this was a shotgun marriage from ownership between Josh and Vrabel. Maybe you disagree, because Josh was linked with Mike dating back to December, before the season ended, before the hiring process started. And Josh doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. So he just might be on board with like, look, as long as I get my job, I get to stay local. I get paid pretty well. I'll be here. You hire who you want, but then I'll run the offense and make it work. Who says no?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm fully at the place where I think it's a shotgun marriage. I just think that when you have such an important task, and that is the task of elevating Drake May after year one, where he showed plenty of promise, right? And now it's the most important player on your football team and could be the cornerstone for a dozen years or whatever. Like, I'm trying to get this right, and I'm trying to get it right in a short time, because again, you're on that rookie contract, so you have the ability to push some things money-wise and make some things happen earlier that you might not when he finally gets paid. Assuming he delivers on his potential, he finally gets paid what probably 3 years from now will be a $70 million a year contract.
But to that point though, shouldn't that give you reason to be confident and happier about this staff? Because the number one most important thing, just like a draft class, right? You need to nail that top pick. If you get the first round pick right, it matters just as much as basically every other pick. The offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, you and I both agree, Josh was a great hire. If there's someone to be in charge of Drake May, just get this position right. And we all know it takes protection and better receivers and yada, yada, and that'll come. Like if they got that right with Josh, isn't this mostly a good job? Well done.
No, because I mean, look, that's a good place to start, obviously. And I'm not even saying like, look, last year they threw that staff together. Nobody knew it, like it's just like those are Elliott hires and the different pieces. And it just, there was no freaking cohesion And I want some damn cohesion. And Mike talked about like sort of we want to share the sort of the same vision and see it through the same set of eyes. And like, okay, well, if you're plucking this guy from over here and this guy from over here and this guy from over here, but he's overseeing all this stuff and he sees it, he comes from a different tree and sees it differently. Like, I mean, I have time to get it together and it could work because there's a lot of experience in the room that they didn't have last year, a lot more experience. But I don't know. I just would like a little bit more of these guys have worked together for a while. Or like Josh knows this guy knows what he wants. And this guy will be able to, you know, if Josh says it one way and it doesn't seem like it's getting through, this guy will be able to translate the message and get it through. And like, okay, here we are. We're all going in the same direction where, man, it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now. You know, a lot of guys, as you mentioned, alpha males with big egos on the offensive side of the ball. And I just don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. There's obviously, we got a long way to go before they're all actually on the football field and we get to see these guys coach together.
And to argue against my own point, you know, if there was anything yes, often, again, this is not good. You tired, me at the end of a week, the tension is going to be bouncing around the place. But to the idea of, you know, Josh is the most important piece, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, that's great. That is maximum important. But if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it matters as much who you surround the offensive coordinator with as much as it does who that offensive coordinator is. Just like the quarterback, okay? There's only so much even the best quarterbacks in the world can overcome if they're not afforded protection and proper pass catchers. The same way that Bill O'Brien, we're saying a lot of the same things now about Josh that we did back then. He's going to professionalize the operation. He knows the system. He's flexible. He's been here. He's developed quarterbacks, yada, yada, yada. He'll fix it. Well, when you hand him, again, all due respect to professional coaches who have since gone on to do great things in the college ranks, Ross Douglas and Vinny Sanseri and Troy Brown, and like that's half of your staff because Bill kept a very, very tight-knit circle. There's only so much Bill O'Brien can do. And so what I do think will benefit this team is if they're on the same page. And that's the biggest obstacle, the question mark, the reason for concern, is if they are aligned in vision, but also they can put this diversity of experience and thought, which you have not seen in New England, basically since 2000, right? It was all Bill, came from Bill, people who coached under Bill, et cetera, et cetera. That will help them. That will help with problem solving. Okay, Doug Marrone says, oh, we faced this blitz when I was with the Jaguars in 2017. It affected this protection. We can do this. You know, the same way Josh has spoken about. I was a much better coordinator in New England the second time around. Whereas in 2007, I had the greatest offense ever, but we're flummoxed by this Steve Spagnuolo game plan with the Giants, and it just took us so long to get the right answer. The more experienced coaches you have, the smarter coaches you have, the better you will be on game day, provided, again, they're speaking the same language. And that's their first obstacle here to kind of come together. And then you obviously have to go from there. So I get the reasons for concern. I just look at this as kind of the roster as well. The Patriots can't be picky. Like, get good coaches in the building, then figure it out. Get good players, get real talent in the building, then figure it out. But if you're going to argue someone who we know fits with Josh, who might be a little bit less of a coach than Thomas Brown, is coaching tight end. Say Nick Caley came back some weird way. Okay. Right. And that'll be better, if not the same production. It's hard to argue against that.
You make all fair points. Like, look, I'm not, like I said, I'm not pressing the panic button. I have questions about how they went about doing this. And I would have thought that Josh would have a little bit more influence. Again, it's Mike's staff. It's his job. Like he's the head coach. It runs through him. And I get it. But okay, there are some, at least on the coaching staff, not necessarily, again, between Josh and Mike, some arranged marriages on the offensive coaching staff. Like, you're going to take my guy. And that's my guy. So make it work.
In more ways than one, this speaks to, okay, everyone knows in that building whose team this is. This is not Mike sharing with an Elliott Wolf. This is not Mike sharing with anybody. You report to him. He hired you, Thomas Brown. He hired you, Jason Hoteling, Doug Marrone, et cetera, not Josh. You're not reporting to Josh. This is Mike's team. I think everyone accepts that, knows that, or certainly will in the coming days and weeks, and especially on defense where, you know, I talk about, I don't totally align with the concerns about the offensive staff, but I get them. These concerns are ones that I personally feel and believe in because I just think in speaking with players who played safety under Brian Belichick and who played corner for Mike Pellegrino, forget the 15-minute snapshots and snippets that we got with them once every 2 weeks in the season, which really isn't all that telling anyway. These two guys were good coaches. Mm-hmm. These two guys are coaches who worked in a system similar to what Mike Vrabel will be bringing to New England from Tennessee and wherever else he's been. Okay. They're gone. See it. And they would have come back. I know that for a fact. Contractually, at least one of them, their contract was up. So this was not a, hey, you're fired, we got to pay you out and you're going to go away. This was a situation where Mike had the option. But in both cases, he chose to turn down, in Mike Pellegrino's case, a coach who just made a second-team All-Pro in Christian Gonzalez, his first-round talent, I get that, presided over Stephon Gilmore's Defensive Player of the Year campaign in 2019, and at that point had told his guys, hey, I don't know what I don't know. I'm learning too, but we're going to make this work. And a guy who Jonathan Jones said on this podcast 2 weeks ago, watch more film than anyone else in a facility, famous for bragging about how much film they watch and how hard they work. And that's not just to players and coaches. That's to other coaches and players around the league. Okay.
Yeah.
Patriots tell prospects we work harder than anybody else. Are you with me? Are you a little softer on that? What do you make of what we know about the defensive staff so far?
No, I'm 100% with you on those two guys. They're really good coaches. You talk to the guys that had run through that safety room. And look, there were some really good players that ran through that safety room, yes, and guys that actually helped Brian Belichick become a better coach, guys like Devin McCourty, guys like Duron Harmon. But they talked to you about, like, we learned so much from him, and the give and take with him was great. And when I look at this year, and you and I had this conversation at some point during the season, maybe later in the season, when I was like, go look at position groups and say what position groups have gotten better, what young players have developed. And one of the guys that did a nice job was Brian Belichick. Del Pettis obviously came out of nowhere, and he did some good things for this football team and developed. I think Marte Mapu, whether he fits going forward or not, I don't know. But he had moments where he looked like a good NFL football player. And again, some of that goes to the coaching that he got. And Pellegrino he does an awesome job. And he's like a nut. Like, if you ever go and you watch the 22s and like you're watching and like there's this guy on the sidelines when one of his dudes makes a play, you're like, oh, what was that lunatic running up and down the sidelines? It's Pellegrino. He was so invested in those guys and took so much pride in some of the unknown guys that, for instance, played in week 18. And you're like, and did well. It's like, that's a huge moment for them. I poured everything I could into them so that they could have that and have that be able to be put on tape. And like, they'll miss those guys. Like that. If you told me those two guys are coming back, I said, good. The staff is better for it. We'll see about the new guys, but they're going to be missed.
And I want to say this to the folks. So I don't think this makes up a large audience for the podcast, but I know there is some overlap. There's a Venn diagram of listeners to this show and people who listen to, let's just call them toxic radio shows in the market that just immediately assume any praise from a journalist like myself, like you, a beat reporter who deals with players and coaches on a regular basis, comes from a place of quid pro quo. And that, this is a favor to them and this and that, as if we do not have any objectivity or integrity left in our jobs. And again, I don't think it's a large part of people, but I want to draw an important point here. Because I've said this to this person's face. There was no one who was a bigger pain in the ass with the media. 2019, 2020, 2021, mostly like 2022 on Bill Belichick's staff than Mike Pellegrino. Like, borderline jerk. And that's his prerogative. You deal with us however you want. You're a grown person, so am I. So the idea that this is some sort of shilling from you or from me, which is garbage anyway, because there's just no good way to go about your business. As some people who are in this job or have been in this job or whatever have admitted to this. Not how I go about my business. Does it cost me scoops? Probably, sure. Okay, but I get to sleep well at night. The point is, I know they're good coaches from what I've seen with my eyes, what I've heard with my ears, and really nothing to do with interacting with either of these guys personally. So I just want that out there because I've even joked with Mike. He was much better with the media this year. And that doesn't mean anything. Okay. It doesn't put any points on the board. Certainly didn't make their defense any better. But when we say he's a good coach, you got to trust us. And if not, I don't know what you're doing listening.
Yeah. I mean, no, quickly. There are people that have gone through that building that I have had terrible relations. I did not like this person, whatnot. And I'm not saying that about Mike, but like in general, but like if I talk to players and they say, dude is a great coach, like he's helped me so much. I'm like, all right, well, I can separate the person who I may or may not like versus the coach. And when players tell me he's a good coach and there are players that I respect that are telling me this, then I have to listen to that. Like, and on Brian Belichick's case, just quickly, I mean, I hammered his dad the last 2 years, like hammered him. Brian's a good coach. That is like, and Bill, obviously Bill's one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest, but like that, you can separate all those things. He's a good coach. He's going to, wherever he goes next, they're going to be lucky to have him.
Yeah. And to this point, I still have you on this podcast. Okay. That's
excellent point. Jerk.
don't like you at all. You bring good content. Anything else?
I'm going to send you another
side?
Soprano meme at this point. Even
Yeah, that's the only way we're really just conversing these days. A lot of birds flying as well. Terrell Williams, I haven't spent a ton of time with him. This is another case, just like the draft prospects. I'm going to ask around, got some intel. Doug Kide had a great piece earlier this week on Monday. You should read it in the Herald, what to expect from the defense. And some of us spoke to the line play, a little bit more penetrating, single gap format. Anything you heard in Mobile, scuttlebutt, about the defensive staff, about Williams, about Vrabel, what's coming next? What are just kind of impressions about the coaching staff before we hit it quickly in the front office and then go to the prospects that you saw on the field in Mobile?
I just heard, and look, I in my previous life at NFL Network, I covered Tennessee quite a bit because they were good there for several years, and we didn't have anyone in the area. And obviously, I had covered Mike as a player, and I can just tell you, even then, like the way they talked about Terrell Williams, who was the defensive line coach in Tennessee for all those years, and then became the assistant head coach there. A lot of people feel like it's overdue, that he should have been a DC before this, and he's got the opportunity now. And that it's funny, and I think I mentioned this on Early Edition a couple of weeks ago, that the way he was described to me was similar to the way that Brian Flores was described to me when Brian Flores was in the building as a position coach and then became the DC, was that he knows your wife and kids, and he asks about them, and he cares, and he'll tell you that he loves you. And then he'll turn on the tape and be like, what the bleep did you do? And we got to get better. But then he'll help you get better. So I got that, it's just like this sort of the same description of Terrell. And obviously Brian did a great job when he was here. We don't talk about the other stuff that happened after he left, and has done great stuff in Minnesota now as a defensive coordinator. Okay, I'm on board with this. And obviously Vrabel's, going to have a hand in the defense and how it goes. And there's been some talk that maybe he even calls the defense. We'll see about that. But I feel comfortable with having those two guys sort of headlining the defense for sure.
Yeah, and this is another guy who has just been in the league, and it sounds so easy, and it's simple, and it is. The experience point, though, is more than just the guy shows up with some sort of credibility. Like, eventually you have to prove yourself to players day in and day out. Do you have answers to my questions? Are you watching me, in a very heightened focus, detailed type of way? Yes. Am I getting better under your stewardship? Like, DeMarcus Covington made better defensive linemen when he was here. Certainly didn't make a better defense as an entire coordinator, and that bore out with all the statistics. He's back to being a D-line coach, as we heard reported yesterday, now in Green Bay. Terrell Williams has done this. He has been in multiple systems. He's been in multiple places. Like, that experience part is really going to help at the leadership level, because inevitably that's where the questions follow up on game day from fellow assistants, let alone the players, and obviously game planning. I think it was a good move without knowing a ton, and your further intel backs it up. All right, quickly, Ryden Cowden was down there in Mobile. Elliot Wolf was down there in Mobile. Matt Groh was down there in Mobile. And Alonzo Highsmith, I believe, was down there in Mobile with Mike Vrabel. So basically all of the brain trust. But as it was described to me from someone who was down there, not name you, Ryden Cowden was running the show a little bit more than the rest of everybody else after Mike Vrabel, arranging meetings, setting things up, initiating. Did you see the same thing? And if not, what can you tell us?
Yeah, no, I did see the same thing. And again, I didn't spend as much time hyper focused on them. But just talking to people, that was Brian's the point guy here and is doing a lot of stuff to get things set up. Matt Groh was doing it was on the field quite a bit. The other guys tended to be up in the box. Cameron Williams was there. So there were others in the facility and watching players. But the vibe I got from talking to agents, other coaches, other organizations was Brian's the guy. And I mean, we'll see. Obviously, I think it's clear that the Crafts would like Elliott to remain a part of the staff. And I think you and I sort of share a similar opinion that, while last year's player acquisition was not great from Elliott, it's pretty quick when you had to turn over a roster that was like this. And I know people say, well, he was part of it, but Bill made the final decision on everything. And a lot of times that, especially in later years, meant completely going in the opposite direction of the people that were in charge of, scouting these players for 6 to 8 months and doing all the background work. And then you get a call from a buddy, and the buddy would be like, you should draft so-and-so. And it'd be like, we've got this guy on the board. We did great work on him. He's a great player. He really fit the system. Nah, we're going to go over here.
Well, and Burt Breer, just really quickly, gave two very clear examples of this, one of which was reported at the time, and you saw an exodus of people from the front office after this pick was made. I'm not saying that was the final straw, broke the camel's back, et cetera, but like there's a reason that happened, and it was connected to the selection of N'Keal Harry in 2019. Big endorsement from his pal, then the Arizona State head coach is Todd Graham, okay, overruling the scouts. 3 years later, they're at 21. You, me, everyone else is going, best player on the board, plays a position of need. His name, Trent McDuffie. Take him. This is in real time. Go back and read it. Mm-hmm. And supposedly, according to Burt, his response to the scouts who were saying the same thing in the room was, well, who's he covered in the Pac-12? And this isn't to rub any of that in Bill's face. It's just to say he moved back. And the two-time, maybe three-time soon, reigning Super Bowl champions got a great corner. And he took a guy from Chattanooga, which I would say, as Mark Bertrand did when I watched this clip this week from the Sports Hub, who did Cole Strange block at Chattanooga. So when you want to go, oh, Elliott's been a part of this, tell me the picks that he had that much control or influence over, and we can talk about them. And I would also note, he was never number 2. It was Dave Ziegler, then Macro, which reminds me of another interaction I had on Twitter this week, which is just, again, still just a wonderful place. Of someone going, oh, well, yeah, the buck stopped with Bill, but no. There are no buts when the buck stops. That is famously what makes the buck stopping the buck stopping. That's what it is. Anyway, again, you and I are in agreement. Crafts want to keep Elliott Wolf. GMs have told me, ex-GMs have told me, super smart guy, photographic memory when it comes to this. Doesn't mean the offensive line was in a complete in real-time debacle, which we called out. The receivers, not good enough, okay? And it's part of the reason that I think ultimately in May he might be willing to take a number 2 position under Ryan Cowden. If it comes to that, the guy lives down the street from his aunt now. Detail I left out of my profile back in April, which no one cares about now, given everything that's happened since. Anyway, I've been going on too long. What have we missed before we pivot to the players?
I think I think Vrabel has quickly put his stamp on this thing, just the entire organization. And as I was talking to someone who knows him quite well, and he was like, he's going to test everybody, us in the media, but people in the building constantly. And there's a push and a prod and like, okay, how do these people react to certain situations and demands and what have you? And I think it's a far cry from what last year looked like. And it might have even been a far cry from what it looked like in the last couple of years of Bill. And I'm just interested to see how quickly he weeds out some people, because I think that's invariably going to happen. And also, like, when you get to the roster, I think there's going to be some significant changes on the roster that go beyond adding people in free agency. I'm talking about guys that are currently on the roster that I don't think are going to be Vrabel guys. And I don't think they're going to get a leash. I think they're going to find their way out of town pretty quickly.
So are you going to stay or are you going to survive?
I have ordered my new hard hat for the press conferences. I'm going to have some safety goggles. It's going to, I dealt with him in those times in Tennessee, and like he wants good questions. Sometimes you give him a good question and he's still going to slap you around, and that's just the way it is. And like, okay, let's go. As we always say, I think a lot of people think we try to make it about ourselves, and there are some people that do that. I always feel like my job is to get the guy on the record. And if I ask the question, whatever you do with it after I ask the question is up to you. If you want to answer the question honestly or as honest as you can without whatever, go for it. And if you want to snort at me like the old guy used to or what have you, that's your choice. As you said earlier, grown men can make grown men decisions, whatever you want to do.
Shades of Bill, they're coming back. And of course, no one cares about the press conference, so long as you're winning.
Right.
Or you're close to it.
Yeah, you're not stepping in it every 3 days.
And you shouldn't. That's it. Right. That's like, and it's such a small, tiny part of the job. Like we're discussing it because that's the muck that we're in, that we're working with, the moments that we share. But in the grand scheme of football and the NFL, like it matters zilch. But for the exposure fans will get, you're going to notice some things that felt very familiar over the course of 24 years here in New England. All right, we are going to pivot to the future. I'm going to ask Mike for 2 to 3 offensive prospects, 2 or 3 defensive prospects that he think the Patriots could draft from the Senior Bowl. And if you think that this is just a nice tease before we get into a break, A, it is. But B, if you look back at the Titans draft history when Mike Vrabel was there with John Robinson, certainly not back now in New England, but came from a similar background, they drafted a ton of Senior Bowl players. So I won't guarantee it. But one of the players Mike is going to mention, offensive or defense, maybe both, is going to be on the Patriots board right after this. Okay, so I know most of you still remember. It's only been about 5 years. The Patriots playing playoff football, the best of the best going head-to-head. That's what January and February is all about. I don't know when the Patriots will be back, but I know if you want to make lifetime memories, whether it's the NFL playoffs or later on this year, the NBA playoffs or the NHL playoffs, or you want to even go to a March Madness game, there's only one place to go. It's Game Time, the best secondary ticket marketplace you will find for one simple reason. They have a lowest price guarantee. And I use this, as you heard me tell you before, to make lifetime memories with my wife out in London. Went to the game with one of my best friends. Granted, he was a Jags fan. Nothing you could do about that. But the point is, I went to Game Time because they gave me that lowest price guarantee. Plus, as I was picking out tickets for them, they gave me a seat view right there, what it was like to be in Wembley Stadium. And you could do this even if you want to go to the Super Bowl. Find that exact seat. What's your view? Compare it to another one, but only at Game Time, where you get not only the seat view and the lowest price guarantee, but Game Time picks, where they give you all the best deals right up front, all in pricing. You don't even have to go searching for all these different deals. It's just the best of the best right there. You can find your tickets and go to the Super Bowl or any other event in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase in these lifetime memories. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, the best tickets, the lowest price guaranteed tickets to any game, concert, show, playoff, or regular season. Guaranteed. What time is it? Game time. Offensive standouts. Everyone wants to hear about the receivers. Do you have a receiver or two that could be on the Patriots board, will be on the Patriots board, that you think they could draft come April?
Jack Beck from TCU, who is almost 6'2". He's about 215. He's sort of the power slot. There was a lot of comparison this week to Puka Nacua, which, look, Puka Nacua, what he's done the first couple of years, is bananas. And maybe this is an overcorrection because a lot of people missed on him and he didn't get picked into the 5th round. But there are some shades, like with his physicality and his power, and he runs better than I thought and had seen in watching film before I went down there, because he was a name that had sort of popped up on my radar. But he had a really good week. And I was surprised at times with his ability to get down the field and then go high point the football. Like, I didn't necessarily know that he had that in his game, but when you look at the body type, it makes sense. He was impressive. I'll give you another one, and this is a totally different version of a slot guy. This is the old school Patriots slot. That's Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Jaden Higgins is the bigger outside receiver for Iowa State, who got a lot of buzz and is probably considered, or at least coming into this, was considered a better prospect. This kid, man, excellent route running, physical for his size. I mean, he's 5'9" and change, right? And one of the things that stood out to me on tape, and then I saw it this week at the Senior Bowl, is like run after catch stuff, like the ability to quickly turn into a runner, and there's some power in that frame. Like he did remind me just a little bit of an old school Pats receiver. That's all I'm saying. You know, look, when Josh was here the last time, they went with a bigger slot in Jacoby Myers, right? Like that sort of, and it was more about, we want to run the ball a little bit more out of this personnel. But I'm just saying, in terms of types, I thought he had a really good week. He tracks the ball well too, like footwork on the sidelines. Like there's a lot of good stuff there from that player. So I like those two guys. And I'll give you, I mean, there were a few offensive linemen. It was a better group than I thought too. Not nearly as good as the D-line group, but a pretty good group. And you've probably seen the name if you're into this stuff. Anthony Belton from NC State had an awesome week. And he was a right tackle at NC State. He played right and left here. He has some guard, some pitches he could actually go inside. But I thought his tape in college showed he was like, it seemed like the right tackle, like a powerful guy. Pass protection was okay, but he was more of a physical mauler type at right tackle. What I saw this week in one-on-ones, which are designed for the pass rusher, that's like pass rushers have the edge there. His feet, the way he moved, his punch, like maybe he could play the left side, and maybe he could be a much better pass protector than he was, or he should be a much better pass protector than he was at NC State. Not that he was bad at NC State. I'm just saying he was more of a run guy, to me at least. And I saw a lot of good things from him. And I think a lot of people were like, he's made himself some money this week and is going to go maybe higher than the initial projections were. So I liked what I saw out of him.
So you and Greg talked about Anthony Belton when you were down there. And I don't remember who said it or if this was like a sentiment that you guys had gathered from scouts. Anthony Belton projects right now, again, it's late January, someone who has not studied the tape yet that is coming up very, very soon. Day 2. Is this a case where a guy goes from possibly second round, late first? Because either the Patriots will be there at the high point of the second round, or they'll have the ammo to move up into the first round if they believe enough in him and secure a 5th-year option.
I didn't see, as much as I liked him, he didn't look like that guy.
Okay.
And there's plenty of great players second round and on. I didn't see that, but I definitely could see him working his way up, especially again, when you look at the tackle class and some of the questions about the tackle class and, whether it's, Will Campbell in the short arms or all these different things, right? Is Kelvin Banks, a lot of people I still have heard from, including down there when he wasn't there, think he's a guard. So I don't know how that plays, but we saw it last year, and I think it was considered a better tackle group. The run on the tackles and what happened to the Patriots is they kind of got left, or at least the feeling around the league was they got kind of caught with their pants around their ankles a little bit and ended up like, oh, this is the last of the good tackles. So we'll take Caden Wallace and see what we can do here. I think Belton goes higher than that. And I think I could see him in the top of the second round.
Okay. There's a name you didn't mention that I also saw in Daniel Jeremiah, who's going to be my go-to guy for a lot of this, Dane Brugler too. And there are plenty of good draft analysts out there. Yep. It's not besmirching anybody else, but the guy's worked for 3 different teams. I've spoken with him before for stories, interviews on the side. Daniel Jeremiah has great Zabel down there, offensive tackle out of North Dakota State. He played some guard, he even played some center and even pulled that off.
Yeah.
Daniel calls him, I'm going to call him DJ. I've got his number. I can call him DJ. DJ calls Gray Zabel a day 1 starter. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you see from him?
Yes. No, he was awesome. Like day 1, he was the first guy I put in my studs and duds. Like he just was, holy crap. I think he's the center, but he can definitely play guard. And he also played tackle at North Dakota State. And North Dakota State, like obviously not, they're not LSU or whatnot, but that's a real good program. They win national champ. That's a legit program. And they've had plenty of guys come out of there. Yeah, the only reason I didn't mention him is because I think tackle's a bigger need for the Patriots. But yeah, I think he plays. I think he plays right away. He, as someone told me, and I wrote this for Boston Sports Journal. It's actually in my notebook this weekend. He won the week was the quote. He won the week. So, and yeah, absolutely. Like I was drawn to him. Like the first day, the dynamics were like, Greg's watching the big guys and I was watching more of the little guys, but one-on-ones are going, you can sometimes time it so that you're watching back and forth. And like it's the first rep I saw, I was like, oh, okay. And then like kept looking out of the corner of my eye, like I want to see him do it again. Oh, there he is again. Oh, hey, how about that? And then you start watching him and it was like, oh, I put him at guard, he put him at center, like, and he was a standout. He was really, really good. He's technically sound. He's strong, like, and he's got a little edge to him. Stood over a guy when he knocked him down. Like, just little things that happen during the course of talk about alpha males. There's a bunch of alpha males on that field. And he's like, no, I'm a badass. Don't mess with me. I was like, yeah, I think we could be friends. Not really, but you know what I mean.
That came so natural out of your mouth. No, I'm a badass.
Yeah, no, I that's what I say to myself in the mirror every morning.
Yeah.
And then I proceed to get my, slapped around all day. And then
take
I
your
realize
yeah,
it's not. Jared
well, you mentioned North Dakota State. Like it's a, FCS program that people are familiar, won a bunch of national championships. Like Cody Mock came out of there not too long ago. Another experienced, versatile lineman, goes to Tampa. I think he was a day 2 pick. Was really crossing my fingers that this guy who plays offensive line, missing his 2 front teeth, would end up in my life. And I get to cover him and ask questions about those teeth until he's sick of me. Didn't happen. Point is, the versatility is something I know they're going to value as a team that just doesn't have the depth and was trying to put square pegs in round holes that got bigger and bigger and bigger because you just couldn't fill them all year. And those holes were left tackle and right tackle. Zabel's a name to keep an eye on. Second round, maybe third, wherever he ends up. One other position and two other names I want to ask you about, because as we always do here in New England, it seems like this is just our fate. Has been since at least 2018, 2019. We're going to talk about receivers. We're going to talk about offensive tackles. And deservedly so. Yeah. But tight end is a position that I think for the offense that Josh wants to install and that Vrabel wants to bring in terms of this attitude, tight end is going to be an important position to tie all of this together. The run concepts, being able to run from light personnel, and obviously have a receiving threat. And Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo are two guys that stood out, according to some, my pal DJ, down in the Senior Bowl. I've seen Arroyo in person. He's a little bit more of an F and a move tight end. I was impressed with him. Granted, they played Wake Forest. You and I could probably score at least 6 points against Wake Forest. Did you see anything from either two of them?
I love the tight end class, and I'm glad you brought the group up, because I think it's more of a need than maybe other people do, because I think you're in a transitional period. Like, how much more good football can you get from Hunter? He was terrific last year. I'm not sure Hooper's back. We'll see. Jaheim Bell, they played him some, but I didn't see anything that really jumped off the tape.
Well, let me just read that quickly. Elijah Arroyo's out of Miami. That's for folks who want to look these guys up. Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor, is from LSU, and both bigger, can play in line, but traditional kind of lighter move tight ends.
Mason's only 20 years old too, which I didn't realize until I got down there, which is crazy. He is, of the group that was in Mobile, he's the most well-rounded guy, like can do the inline stuff, can move a little bit, sure hands, like just a complete sort of player. He's definitely in the conversation, I think, to be the third tight end picked. And of course, we're talking about your boy from Penn State, whose name is Warren, and then Colston Loveland from Michigan. He might be the third picks right now. Yeah, he might be the third tight end, which could mean first round. And I think, by the way, I've heard of Rojo and stuff. I'm not positive.
No.
I'll just have to go. You know what? I meant to 9 times. I meant to look it up, and then my scattershot brain, I haven't looked up the pronunciation of it. Regardless, the Miami tight end, he's big enough where he wasn't much of a blocker at Miami, or they didn't use him much in that regard. But I saw some good things in him blocking this week, and I think his size, his frame, his athleticism, he should be better at it. So while I don't think he makes his living being an inline tight end, I think he can do it. So he was something. Ferguson, the tight end from Oregon, just a good player. Like, I don't know that he's going to test off the charts, but like, he gets open. He gets open. Doesn't safety, linebacker, and he catches the football. Natural catcher of the ball with his hands, like just very smooth. And I like this kid Fedone from Nebraska, who I knew nothing about. I think I saw one Nebraska game in the last 2 years. He's twice had ACL surgery, once as a freshman and then once as a redshirt freshman. He was a 4-star coming out of Iowa. And like, I think I described him as, he looks like he's getting electrical shocks in each leg at a different time while he's running. Oh, no. It's just a weird looking, someone said baby deer, but I didn't think that was fair because it was weirder than that. But like 6'5", 255, and like, what hands on the dude? Like, he's a good football player. Like, he could be another one that's in the conversation. And like, Gunnar Helm was supposed to be there from Texas. He didn't show because obviously they had a long season. Like, that position group is stacked this year. And I would be intrigued if they plucked one of those dudes.
All right, give me your favorite offensive prospect. You're going down with the ship with this guy. He's going to make it. He could be a fit in New England, but even if not, he's going to crush it elsewhere. That player is blank on offense.
Zabel. I just think he fits. No, I do. I just think he fits. Like, I think whatever West Coast, Earhart, whatever you're running, I think he fits. I think he brings that kind of attitude and edge that we've seen. And we've seen a lot of guys in recent years. Quinn Meinerz is another guy, like, sort of like step right in and be this guy from a small school. Like, I think he's got that in him.
Cool. All right, we're going to move on to defense here in a second. And there are plenty of, we talk about receivers, offensive tackles. Patriots are going to take an edge player in this draft. They need one. They need defensive tackles. Even if Christian Barmore comes back and is better than ever, which we don't know yet, they need linebackers. There were a ton of players at all of those positions, plus corner, at the Senior Bowl who could be on the Patriots board and certainly will make it in the NFL. But at first, I got to tell you, I know coming up Super Bowl week, you, I, and Mike are going to be inundated with ads asking for your money, telling you about how you can make more money when you integrate it with sports, and they'll have offers and this and that. The bottom line is this. No one in those ads or anywhere is going to have a better deal for you than we have at PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Okay, it's you versus the numbers. Okay, that's as simple as it gets. They have given away millions upon millions upon millions of dollars these playoffs. And right now, I have a $50 bonus for you once you play your first $5 lineup. And on top of that, you don't even have to build a whole lineup because PrizePicks, ahead of the big game, which we all know rhymes with duper poll, okay, they're giving you a square. So as you build a lineup of 2 to 6 players, if you've never played daily fantasy sports, this is how it goes. You pick a player who's got a number. It could be Patrick Mahomes, let's say. Will he have more or less than 250 passing yards? And you go, oh, the Eagles defense, maybe this, Kelsey, okay, I'll go less, okay? Then you pick another player, more or less 100 yards, Saquon Barkley, okay, boom, more. You don't have to do that. You just have to do one because Patrick Mahomes in the big game at PrizePicks has a more than less than 0.5 passing yards. That's it. They're giving this to you. You pick Patrick Mahomes more than 0.5 passing yards. Then you pick one other player, any stat, any projection, honestly, any sport. And you can do this with basketball, hockey on PrizePicks. You lock in that lineup of 2 players. You put $5 down and win or lose. They will give you a $50 bonus. And if you win, great, take it home. Do whatever you want. But the only way to do this is if you download PrizePicks today. Go download the app. Put in code CLNS. Okay, that's $50 bonus to get after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the PrizePicks app today. Enter code CLNS for a $50 bonus once you play your first $5 lineup. Terms do apply. Do it right now ahead of the big game. PrizePicks, run your game. All right. Defense.
Did you do that all off the top of your head?
I plead the fifth.
A little bit. Okay.
So defense. This is, for my money, by the end of the year, the Patriots have the worst pass rush in the league. Fewest sacks, bottom 10 in pressure rate. They're the safest place in football basically was across from their defensive line. Get them some help, Mike Giardi. Who are the Patriots looking at? Who will be on their board? What are the guys that stood out to you down at the Senior Bowl?
Well, I think this first guy that I'm going to mention is not going to be there, but what a wow 2 days in Mobile, and that's Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, and he is an interesting case study because in 3 years, I think he had 4.5 sacks total. And you look at the package of the athlete that he is, 6'5", 281 pounds. Someone told me they think he's going to run a 4.5, which at 281 pounds is absurd. But he was awesome in the first 2 days at Mobile, and then he tapped out because, as it happens a lot with these all-star games, you start getting that buzz of first round or like, oh, you're moving up on the boards. Some of these guys choose that option and leave. He was one of them. He is. There was a moment. He had a strip sack. He beat the right tackle, one of the kids from LSU, whose name I'm drawing a blank on right now. Swiped the ball off the quarterback's hand, and then the way he was facing was towards where all the scouts and the front office people are. So there's one side of media, and then there's the other side, and that was the side he was facing. And he proceeded to let them know that he was him in colorful language, shall we say. And it was just a moment. It was one of those things, but like I thought he was fantastic for the 2 days. Of course, I'd love to see him stay and like work his way through like some other guys did. He did not, but he was something. Mike Green from Marshall, who had one of the plays of the entirety of the Senior Bowl when he ran through Josh Connolly's chest in one-on-one. And Connolly is one of those tackle prospects that he could end up being a first-round guy. Some people, again, could think he might be a guard. I think he's still kind of growing into his frame, and he's a tackle to me. But
Oregon.
Yeah,
Connolly.
Connolly was expecting something else. He was not expecting power. And you can Google it. I think I had it on my timeline on Twitter. He just went right through his chest and put him on his ass. And the place went bananas. And they had a rep later where Connolly won the rep. But it was definitely a wow moment. And he was already rising, I think. And I'm sure he's already up there. I think he's a first-round pick. But now he might be, to me, the way he played the first 2 days in Mobile. And he, by the way, also tapped out after 2 days. For the same reason. He's getting that buzz. I think people thought him as a late first round guy, high second. I think he is in the low 20s and maybe could crack the high teens because I think he's that kind of bendy, explosive athlete coming off the edge. So he's someone that stood out to me. I'll give you a couple of sticking with that position. Femi Oladejo, I think I got it right, from UCLA.
Nice job.
Yeah, so doesn't have crazy measurables. 6'2", 261, doesn't have the go-go gadget arms, like enough, but like he's not like this freaky guy. He played Mike linebacker for UCLA. And this year he switched to edge. And you can see the footwork that he had to be a Mike linebacker come into play on the edge. And if you give him just a little hint of daylight, he takes it. He's a really nice player. I didn't know much about him. He opened some eyes. I talked to some people who were like, yeah, there's a lot there because he hasn't played over there on the edge very long. So he's someone that I found very interesting. And I'm drawing a blank on his first name, Alexander from Toledo, who's he's more of a defensive tackle, but you could see him in some situations play on the edge. But he definitely, when it comes time to pass rush, I think he's going to have to be inside because I think his length and his quickness will give guards problems. But he had a really, really good week. And again, Toledo, he went to Toledo. Well, Quinyon Mitchell, who got my vote for PFWA Rookie of the Year, didn't get it because he doesn't have the counting stats like Jared Verse did. Toledo guy, like really good football player. I think this guy's a really good football player. He's not going to go as high as Mitchell did in the draft. Mitchell got picked maybe 16th or 17th, but I think he's a day 2 pick, and I think he showed a lot. Like he's got some good length and good motor, and I did notice too, both he and Oladejo were guys that other guys gravitated towards. So when we're talking about the alpha male thing again, when these two guys, who again aren't the biggest names or the biggest stars, there's plenty of first rounders in that group. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss is a first rounder. I mentioned Stewart; he's going to be a first rounder. Most of the guys were feeding off these two dudes and listening to those two dudes, and they were going around the huddle and patting guys up. And someone makes a play when they weren't on the field, and they're running out on the field to give them a high five. Like I like those guys. Like I like that kind of energy, and those two guys definitely presented it.
Darius has
yes, thank you. I scribbled and it looks like Davis, and I'm like, Davis is not his first name.
No. Long arms too, which this will be interesting, right? We're trying to recalibrate, to use the Senior Bowl word. Our expectations, our prototypes for what the front office is going to be looking for. So long it was, for so long it was what Belichick wanted, and we always knew receivers look at the 3-cone time. Cornerbacks better have ball skills. And I don't think those things are going to be flipped on their head, but it will take a little bit for us to learn what the Patriots like. I think when you look at players like Darius Alexander, you check a lot of boxes in terms of that positional versatility, whether you like arm length or not, it's there. And it's someone that you feel like can grow based on, again, the little that I saw here. One name you didn't mention who's gotten some love, and another D tackle who, again, I just think that position that you could draft a kid and he might give you just as much, if not a little bit more than Daniel Ekwale did for more than 60% of the snaps. So it just has never happened. All due respect to Daniel, who's been very good to me, but you understand what he's probably going to get paid heading into free agency. It's going to be less than these guys. Joshua Farmer, who's a little bit bigger, and if he was not as good as people have said down at the Senior Bowl, might be on my list of darts that I throw in the 6th round, being like, they're going to take a big guy. It's going to be an early down run stuffer. He's got a little bit more than that. Okay, it's not just the 2-gapping. Did you see anything from him out of Florida State?
It was funny. So I finished my notebook and I was sort of doing like my overall like impressions of certain players in the thing and at the Senior Bowl, and he was just past the cutoff point. Like I was like, all right, you listed too many names of guys that were impressing you. Like just stop. But he was like right there on the list. Good energy from him all week. There is more to his game than just being sort of a run stuffer. I think he's, again, I don't know how many, I didn't check the actual number of guys that were on the D line that were at the Senior Bowl, but it feels like all of them are getting drafted. Like that's how deep, there's always guys that slip through and end up as undrafted free agents. I felt like all these guys are going to find themselves having their names called at some point during the draft, which is, pretty impressive, and a credit to the guys that scouted these players to get them down to the Senior Bowl.
All right, you got to go down with the ship. Pick one guy, be good in New England, a fit, but he's going to be great wherever he goes.
I think it's Green. I just think there's like and again, it's another Marshall kid, right? So not playing the greatest competition or the highest level, just a real explosive athlete, got an edge to him. I think he's a good football player who's going to get better. So I can see him, wherever he goes. In some ways, and I haven't even looked at the size comparison, but I thought Bryce Huff, he gave me Bryce Huff vibes. And again, I don't know if the measurables are the same or whatnot, but just in terms of some of the explosion I saw off the edge and the skills as a pass rusher, I'm like, at the very least, he's going to be a good situational pass rusher. And as we know in this league, you can play for a long time and make a lot of money doing that.
Yes. Right now, according to my guy, Pal DJ, top 20 pick for Malik Green out of Marshall. So probably out of the Patriots range there, but certainly a name that I saw as much as anybody following along, again, from a distance, not.
Did I call him Mike? See, I'm at the point where fatigue has set in. There's a lot of scribblings, and yeah. Maybe.
No, you did call him Mike because that's his actual name. Wow. All right.
Hey, whatever. No, look, again, see, this is when my fatigue ends up transferring,
Thanks for taking the bullet. Everyone totally bought that. All right. So Mike Green out of Marshall. Everything else stands about him. Explosive pass rusher off of the edge. That much is clear. Anyone who just flipped on the Senior Bowl for a little bit, as I did this week, but deferring to the people that were there, like yourself, and appreciate all that insight. Let's talk about a different bowl that now I can say, because it's not during an ad read, the Super Bowl.
Hey.
And I felt apparently quite the opposite of everyone immediately after the game, and the matchup was determined, and I was rooting for the Bills. I made this clear on TV. This is not something I do very often. I just want to see a little bit of spice, a little bit of variety in my football life when the Patriots are not playing. And here it is, Chiefs Eagles, part 2. I think this game is going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. I think the teams are too talented. I think they're too well coached. I think this is a better Eagles team than you saw 2 years ago, and certainly one better equipped to handle the Chiefs. We're not as good offensively, but better defensively. I think it will be close. I have no idea who wins. I don't want to do that. But just your thoughts about a matchup that no one seems to want, but everyone's going to watch. Yeah. And I think we'll ultimately enjoy in a way that most are not expecting right now.
I, like you, wanted Buffalo to win. And obviously I covered Buffalo for a while there, and I have some warm feelings about some of the people there. So I was kind of hoping that they would break through. Well, they treated me well. So I'm just talking like from a fan base perspective in particular. The fans are awesome. Like, they're crazy, yes, but they're awesome. So I was kind of hoping that they would get their opportunity to break through. I know a lot of people around here don't want that because, nobody else can win the Super Bowl from the AFC East. Screw the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins. But whatever. That's kind of what I was rooting for. It didn't happen. But I'm like you. I think Philadelphia is the best team. I actually thought Philadelphia and Baltimore were the two best teams. So Philadelphia's here. That roster is loaded. The quarterback finally played a good game for the first time in like 2 months. And so if he can deliver a similar type performance, I think Philadelphia is going to be hard to beat. But I just think it's a great matchup. I think the coaching edge is on Andy's side. They've got Patrick, who's unbelievable player.
Careful.
And yeah, so that's all. I think I love the idea that we have a team that somehow we kept thinking like this year, they're not the same. And it's like, they keep finding ways to win. 12 one-score wins this year, which is just absurd. And in some of the ways that they've done it, or blocking kicks at the end of games or whatever, it's like they just have that gene, that winning gene. So this is going to be, to me, a fourth quarter game, and I'm excited to watch it. My son texted me, he's like, this is going to be boring. I was like, shut up. You guys, it's like, come on, man. It's like, one team's going for a three-peat. That's pretty awesome. The other team, like, the coach was like borderline on the hot seat. Was on the hot seat last year. They talked about maybe bringing in Bill Belichick. And at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh, they're not, like, what are they doing? And is he in trouble? And, next thing you know, they rip off whatever it's been, 14 of 15 games. Like, this is two really good football teams, and it should be a really good football game.
I don't want to spend really any time doing the Chiefs dynasty Patriots comparisons, Mahomes, Brady, which is why I said careful earlier, and people are, saying what they will. I just want to call us out as a collective in the media, because I said this on TV when this came up the other day. Oh, is Mahomes in the conversation now with Brady? And before I get to my real point, I go, yes, because we put him there. If we want to talk about fans being aggravated over the Chiefs' place and chasing the Patriots and gaining ground and this and that, that's on us. We are putting in front of them what we choose to put in front of them. And granted, Patrick Mahomes has a big say over his play and how excellent he is. And he is tracking, not there yet, not remotely close, to be the best quarterback ever by almost any metric that you want to measure. But we got a long way to go, folks. And it starts with a potential number 4 ring on Sunday. Obviously, unprecedented three-peat. All due respect to the Packers, who won the title right before we started calling this the Super Bowl, now that I can say it. But it's just, if people are aggravated, we are aggravating them in the process. I don't think that's a story unto itself. If it is, it's self-sustaining, which we also tend to do here in the media. Semi-rant over, unless you want to object. Because I do think the Chiefs' excellence should be honored more than complained about, but people who are bitter, I understand it. And what they're doing is spectacular. And that's really just my ice cold take on this.
No, I heard there was a good debate going the other day about Kelsey versus Gronk. And it's like, they're both awesome players. You're like, I mean, whatever. Like, they're both awesome players. Would one team be better with if they had this guy, the other one? Like, the coaches would have figured it out. If Travis Kelce was in New England, they would have figured out how to maximize Travis Kelce, just like I think Andy Reid would have figured out how to maximize Rob Gronkowski for the time that he played. Like, so, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I'm also happy for Saquon Barkley. That's a kid I covered in college and just a good dude. And I tell you this not because of, again, any real interactions I had in college. Like, you rarely get one-on-one opportunities to speak players, coaches, and I had a few of those, but it's always in a group setting. I'm not talking about the media group setting, though, that convinced me this guy had high character. And I will tell the full version of this story sometime later, perhaps on radio coming up. There was a night, December 2017, I was a part of a Santa crawl. It was me, other Penn State writers, friends, get dressed up as Santa. You had 8 to 10 different bars. All the money, or part of the money at each bar, goes to a certain charity. That's what you're raising this for, okay? Last bar we went to is the Athlete Bar, as it was known then at Penn State. Probably still is, Lions Den. And fast forward, we're there in the middle, just a bunch of awkward mid-20s, sometime in their 30s, folks in Santa costumes in the middle of a dance floor like 2 a.m. I look to my right. Of course, Saquon is behind the bar. He's serving. He's not there grabbing whatever bottle he wants and taking it into a back corner. And he often did sit, as I read in the story this week, just by himself. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone coming by, offering me this, shot that. The man was as calm and as cool, as collected and unselfish as any celebrity I've ever heard or seen behind a bar. Granted, it's not a long list, but the man just went about his business, helped a couple people out, took what he wanted, nothing more, nothing excessive. And that's just kind of how it went, which I don't know how Saquon was. I don't care, but good on the man for just being a gentleman, even at 2 a.m., while some of us were not at a bar when he could have gotten away with murder, and no one would have ever heard about it.
Yeah, I just, as I was just saying about some of the guys that were sort of, leading the charge at the Senior Bowl in terms of the energy and the enthusiasm and sort of assisting teammates. You see it. If you've ever watched Saquon, you've seen this energy from him since the day he walked in the league. But certainly was on display in the NFC title game when Will Shipley comes in and busts this long run and then scores his first ever touchdown a couple plays later. And who's first of all, smart enough to put his helmet back on because he ran on the field, and that's a penalty if you have it's supposed to be a penalty. And then he just was elated for the dude. And it was just he could have, his calf was bothering him a little bit. He could have been wrapped up in a jacket and just waited until he came back and dapped him up. No. He was the first guy down there. I just think that speaks volumes to the kind of teammate that he is. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And he's going to do something awesome. Forget the character stuff or, matchups, history, Chiefs, this and that. That is top 5, however you want to rank them, most exciting players in the league. That guy being in the Super Bowl is good for all of us. It's good for business. It's good for whatever you're going to be doing in a Santa costume or not come Sunday night. All right. He is Mike Giardi. He needs a nap. Thank you very much, sir, for all your intel, insight, everything from Mobile. We're glad you were back, and we'll have you on sometime soon. Are you going to the Combine?
I don't know yet. Probably.
Okay. All right. Well, beers on
I'm going to need to recover for the next
break. Yeah.
3-4 weeks before we get
There's about a month left. I think we all need mind and body preparation for what the Combine is, which is I'll talk about as we get closer. Anyway, thank you. This was awesome, and we'll see you soon either way, right?
You got it.